Hello everybody, welcome to this special session. It's the last substantive element of the Global Forum before the closing ceremony, which starts in just under 1 hour. My name is Alison Kennedy. I'm a Senior Project Officer in the Section for Education for Sustainable Development in UNESCO in Paris. This is where I'm based and speaking to you now. Today we have 3 concurrent special sessions which will showcase 6 innovative research projects focusing on SDG Target 4.7. The aim is to give our audience a flavour of the wide range of work being undertaken around the world on monitoring transformative education. In this session, we will learn about 2 diverse projects. The first is in the field of climate change communication and education. The second is a mapping of global citizenship education networks in Europe and North America to understand how diverse actors cooperate and the specific characteristics of these networks. I have 2 presenters today. I'll introduce them first before we go to the first presentation. So our first presenter is Dr. Kate Greer. She's a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Melbourne's Graduate School of Education. She's currently based at King's College London in the UK, involved in research and teaching related to environmental education, STEM education, and education policy. Kate is also the Associate Director of the Monitoring and Evaluating Climate Communication and Education project, which she's going to talk about in a minute. Our second presenter is Professor Massimiliano Tarozzi, who is the UNESCO Chair in Global Citizenship Education in Higher Education. He is a full professor at the University of Bologna, where he is the founding director of the International Research Centre on Global Citizenship Education. He also has a connection to London. He was co-director of the Development Education Research Centre at the Institute of Education of University College London, where he is also a visiting professor. Today, our 2 presenters will speak for about 15 minutes. And so I pass over to you, Kate, to tell us about the MISE project. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you for that kind introduction. And let me start by just passing on the apologies of Marcia McKenzie, who is the director of the MISE project. Marcia was due to be sharing this presentation with you today, but has had to change her plans due to the unfolding circumstances of the pandemic. Nevertheless, I'm delighted to be here and presenting alongside Massimiliano in her absence. So today I will introduce you to the Monitoring and Evaluating Climate Communication and Education project, or the MISE project. As the name suggests, our focus is on climate communication and education, yet many aspects of the project design are relevant when thinking about monitoring and evaluation for transformative education. So the presentation today will introduce you to the MISE project's aims, methodology and methods, and governance structure. I'll also introduce you to some of the insights from our research so far. Next slide. So the MISE project aims to increase the quality and quantity of climate communication and education, or CCE, globally. The project is supporting international and national policymakers to increase ambition on CCE with evidence-based insights and recommendations. I'll just pause for a moment. Can we see the PowerPoint, Alison? Yeah, okay. It is a global research policy-making collaboration of more than 80 partners, including previous slide, please. Previous. Go back, please. Thank you. One more. Thank you. It is a global policy-making collaboration of more than 80 partners, including the UNFCCC, UNESCO, and the GEM report, scholars, and a wide range of experts. The MISE project is a 6-year project funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. Next slide, please. The MISE project, it's a research policy partnership. This means that it seeks to maximise multi-directional flow of knowledge and collaboration among researchers, policymakers, and practitioners. Through this collaboration, the MISE project is developing rigorous evidence-informed understandings of climate communication and education. We're sharing knowledge with stakeholders and decision makers through a wide range of channels. And we're also able to focus on both critical scholarly contributions as well as applied impact. Next slide, please. The project's governance structure seeks to maximise opportunities for collaboration at a range of levels and across all elements of the project, while still ensuring that we deliver a coordinated project. So we have core project staff made up of our central office team. This is in the top left of our diagram here. We also have our axis leads, who are individuals who lead 3 core bodies of work or axes of activities that I'll introduce you to shortly. These leads in this team are supported by an advisory council and a project steering committee. Then we have working groups that are set up to enable collaboration across the 3 axes. This is a really complex project made up of many parts and many people. So the working groups are crucial forums for discussing different elements of the project progress, gathering input from different countries, regions and sectors, for critiquing ideas and for maintaining project momentum. The working groups are made up of scholars, policymakers and practitioners with a range of expertise. And then we also have our regional hubs, and I'll describe these later. Next slide, please. The project's theory of change is based on a view that climate change communication and education goes beyond increasing scientific literacy to addressing climate change, and that engaging psychosocial and action dimensions is necessary for catalysing change across 3 spheres of transformation. That is, the project seeks to catalyse change in political systems and structures, specifically in intergovernmental processes, in practical technical responses, such as national education policies, media communications, and in personal values and beliefs, which concerns individuals in their social contexts as they're influenced by education, culture, and family. This sphere, this personal sphere, often receives more attention than the others in relation to resources and materials, whereas the MISE project theory of change has a focus on system change via political and associated practical levers, which then brings vital flow-through impacts onto personal values and actions. That said, we do target levers of change in each sphere through our international team membership, project activities, and key impacts. Next slide. In terms of content, the MISE project focuses on the role of evaluation to improve quality and monitoring to increase the quantity. That is to say, through evaluation, we are seeking to support an enhancement of the quality of CCE through deepening understanding of what constitutes quality CCE around the world, including understanding psychosocial influences and regional and cultural considerations. We're seeking to go beyond information about climate change to engage with social factors of denial and grief, gender and financing. And we're seeking to support action across sectors and across regions. Alongside and working in concert with evaluation is monitoring, which we are supporting by providing global data sets, by developing global data sets and indicators. These data sets will be able to support target setting, benchmarking and tracking progress. They also enable transparency of investment and effort so that policymakers and other organisations can direct their efforts towards increasing ambition on CCE. Next slide, please. Turning now to the 3 axes of activity that the MISE project is organised around. So Axis 1, this is focused on evaluating and improving quality. And we do that by developing case studies and knowledge synthesis studies. Axis 2 is focused on monitoring and increasing quantity. Here, our team is focused on identifying indicator areas and relevant data sets, then developing robust indicators that will support countries, agencies and organisations to set targets and monitor progress. And then Axis 3 is about research impact. This includes a wide range of knowledge mobilisation activities to support intergovernmental and national policymakers, education and communication audiences. Having shared with you in the first half of the presentation an outline of the project, I now want to turn to some of the MISE project progress and insights. This progress comes at the end of the first year of the project, which, if you remember, it's a 6-year project. And so the insights demonstrate the richness of this broad research policymaking collaboration for enhancing climate communication and education, or similarly for enhancing transformative education. And now I'll just briefly reflect on each axis in turn. First to axis 1. Oh, next slide, please. Thank you. First to axis 1, which has a focus on evaluating and improving quality. So to date, the MISE project, working in partnership with the UNESCO GEM report, has prepared 20 country profiles on CCE provision. We're developing 3 knowledge synthesis studies that examine the psychosocial factors and the regional and cultural considerations, as well as indicator refinement. And then we've also recently launched a call for proposals for case studies. In terms of insight from this work so far, the country profiles have led to a range of insights that are reflected in our recent research brief, and you can see a link on the screen. These include, next slide please. Thank you. In the top left corner, the inclusion of climate communication and education content in countries' laws, strategies and policies is often limited and lacking in depth. Indeed, only 35% of countries profiled include a national law, strategy and plan focused on CCE, and only 15% report a CCE budget. Second, moving from left to right across the top row, most of the countries' national curriculum frameworks address CCE, but there are gaps in teacher training and in engagement with psychosocial and action-focused learning. Primary and secondary education focuses mostly on cognitive learning, that is the tendency towards learning about climate change. In the bottom row, from the left, climate change is often mentioned in national curriculum frameworks for primary and secondary education. However, engagement needs deepening in education systems and governing structures. And finally, in the bottom right, nearly all of the 20 countries we profiled so far have frameworks that address climate communication, and these often identify marginalised and vulnerable groups as priorities. Next slide, please. Sitting alongside the country profiles to help deepen understanding of quality are our knowledge synthesis studies. Now that is our reviews of the research literature. So far, the teams working here have found that addressing psychological barriers and social norms and going beyond teaching about climate change to supporting them to act is what empowers action. Second, that tailoring CCE to audiences furthers action. Third, that climate change impacts and broader public discourses often catalyse interest in CCE. And finally, that technology availability really influences CCE content and the approaches taken in varied regional contexts. Next slide, please. Turning now to axis 2, which is concerned with monitoring and increasing the quantity of CCE. Here, the MISE project is drawing on and developing a range of data sources and using a life cycle approach to support indicator development. This approach starts with the UNFCCC ACE elements, then draws on existing data types, consults with a range of expert groups, and then works with a set of criteria to develop quality indicator areas and propose indicators. These indicators were validated with in-country partners before being applied for monitoring and target setting by intergovernmental agencies, government policymakers, and others. And once again, you can find this information in our research brief that's found on our MISE website. So far, next slide, please. Thank you. So far, the team has identified over 125 existing data sources that could support global progress on monitoring and evaluation. After applying the dataset selection criteria, we've narrowed that to 32 datasets that are either existing or in progress that are of potentially sufficient quality to support indicator development. This graphic shows the ACE elements in blue, the example indicator areas in grey, the identified cross-national data source in white, and then the number of countries that data set would cover are in the yellow flash. So for instance, if you look at the top right corner of the screen, you can see that a sample indicator area for public awareness might be that the national population perceiving climate change as a serious risk. There's 2 potential data sets identified from which we could work we could work to this indicator area. That is the Lloyd's Register Foundation World Risk Poll and the Reuters Institute Digital News Report. And our team have found that this data could be used to address 142 countries. Again, this graphic and the insights for more detail can be found at our research brief at mise.ca/COP26. Next slide, please. Drawing from this work so far, the team has come up with a number of insights. Firstly, that current data gaps are most pronounced in lower income countries. Second, the data availability across the ACE elements is uneven, with training and public access to information having the least available data sets. And third, that expanding data diversity will enable CCE activity to be identified and counted, and data types to be applicable in all regions. And to that end, our team is currently looking at different data sources, non-traditional data sources that we might be able to pull in, such as from social media. Next slide. Our third and final axis concerns research impact. With this in mind, we're seeking to work with rather than on key stakeholders. Returning to our theory of change and the three spheres of transformation, our primary audiences are policymakers who can affect political change. Our secondary audiences are formal and non-formal education, communication and civil society who can mobilise practical change, leading to learning and action in the personal sphere. Next slide. There are numerous opportunities for engagement and mobilising knowledge that are built into the MISE project. We have our virtual environment, which is our website, coupled with an interactive data platform under development and a digital library. We have a global CCE blog to which we invite our collaborators to contribute. We're developing learning institutes for policymakers and researchers. And we run a webinar series, the next one being on 9th of December with a focus on indicators, and it's open to anyone to attend. Next slide. Our regional hubs are another really important collaborative space. There's hubs currently located in Africa, Australasia, Europe, the Americas and Canada. And there are opportunities to share expertise on quality CCE in your national, regional and cultural context and to contribute to global conversations on CCE. We invite you to sign up to these regional hubs and there's a link on the screen. Finally, next slide please. Before I finish, a really important aspect of our Axis 1 work on deepening understanding of what constitutes quality CCE around the world and then mobilising that knowledge are our MISE project case studies. We're currently looking to fund 10 case studies of innovative CCE that include engagement with social learning and local land-based solutions, with climate justice, including the disproportionate impacts of climate change on Indigenous and racialised communities, on the Global South, women and other historically marginalised groups. And we're interested in these case studies engaging with a range of initiatives that impact learners in all life stages. We invite proposals to this call by January the 4th next year. Next slide, please. In closing, I just want to thank you for this opportunity and thank you, Alison, for the opportunity to share with the MISE project with you all today. We hope that the MISE project's aims, theoretical, methodological underpinnings, as well as its recent insights, have much to offer as we all think about monitoring and evaluation relative to transformative education. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Kate. That was very informative, very rich. We're running up against time a little bit, so I'm going to pass straight over to Massimiliano and to hear his presentation. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Alison, and thank you, Kate, for your very interesting presentation and your project on climate change education. Now moving to another concept, a complementary concept, I would say, global citizenship education. And in my presentation here today, I'm reporting the results of a study aimed at investigating who are the global citizenship education key player in influencing policy and to some extent practice innovation, and on mapping relationships that connect them as a network of global citizenship education providers and policy actors in Europe and in North America. Next slide, please. The research was sponsored by UpSeiU and Ban Ki-moon Center, and it was led by Lynette Schuth and myself with the support of Carla Inguaggiato and Kari Karsgaard, expert in social network analysis and digital research methods. The full report has just been released. It is downloadable for free, or if you want, please feel free to contact me to receive a copy of the report. Next slide, please. Thank you. Why a network perspective? A network perspective is particularly suitable to investigate key actors in promoting GCED, global citizenship education, perhaps more than any other educational issue, is the result of conceptual, political, and even pedagogical negotiations. It follows a non-linear processes of policy implementation. Moreover, the development of innovative educational practices, the circulation of information among key institutions, and also the conceptual co-construction of GCED ideas take shape through networks. Due to these elements, GCED research can benefit from the use of relational data, since it's not sufficient to understand educational phenomenon as isolated from social relations. This study addresses an important gap in GCED research by exploring how it is constructed and moves across networks of actors, including government, NGOs, researchers, and educational institutions, among others. Social network analysis as interdependency as a point of departure. The starting assumption of this methodological framework is that individual characteristics, so the so-called attributes, are not enough to capture the complexity of the phenomenon we aim at observing. And this idea of interdependency echoes the very nature of GCED. And therefore, social network analysis appears to be one of the most appropriate methods for analyzing the structural and functional effects of those phenomena, such as GCED, where social relationships are prevailing over organizational characteristics. Next slide, please. The present study aimed at understanding the characteristic of the GCED networks in Europe and North America. We mapped multiple ties among active promoters of global citizenship education in Europe and North America. Here, promoters is understood broadly to include funding, education, programming, policy development, networking, research, and teacher education. So it's a wide concept of promotion of global citizenship education. In sum, our goal was to understand who the key actors in Europe and North America are, and to map relationships that connect them as a network. And here you can see the detailed research questions that guided this study. Next slide, please. Thank you. The research followed two parallel and complementary methodological approaches: social network analysis and digital methods. First, we conducted a social network analysis focusing on a closed list of policy actors where participation in the network is defined by very specific criteria I illustrate in a moment. We conducted 54 structured interviews with organizations representatives in North America and Europe. The other component of our study applies digital methods to trace the links between GCED actors on both the organizational websites and Twitter using crawler technique. Next slide, please. We built the list of actors, the so-called roster, based on the following criteria: geographical, so they have to be in the region, and also the actors were selected based on the influence, the ability to conceptualize a global citizenship education, their role in promoting GCED, and in organizing educational activities. Next slide, please. The final data the final data set was composed by 56 participants, all influential institutions acting in disseminate, promote, and foster global citizenship education in the region. And it included in the roster these types of organizations, so civil society organization, education institution, governmental body, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, about the results, very briefly. What kind of networks are GCD actors in? Which ones are structural characteristic and specific properties? First of all, instead of an egocentric study, we adopted a whole network design where we were interested in structural properties of the whole network rather than in the position of a single actor in the network. This is important because network properties have implications for understanding how information flows and organization interacts. In this presentation, I'll discuss some of the structural properties of the network based on a number of network measures such as density, connectedness, the closure, etc., emerging from our analysis, which can be helpful to understand and to further improve this network. Due to time constraints, I will just report 5 brief highlights that stand out for the evidence in our analysis. Next slide, please. Next, and next. Okay, perfect. These slides show the 3 networks that emerge in the data based on the relationship and activities among the actors, namely mutual collaboration, technical information sharing, and meetings between organizations. The relations were most dense in the activities of the knowledge sharing. Sorry, the previous one? Previous one? Okay, stop. Thank you. The knowledge sharing, the map number 2, indicate an important feature of the GCD network. Finding also highlight a strong knowledge network formed around the work of GCD. Dense knowledge sharing relations were evident in the network map. If you look at these maps, the node colors indicate the same geographical region where European is dark blue, while North America is red, and the size, the node size means that the larger shape means that the organization devotes more than 50% of their resources to the global citizenship education. Next slide, please. Okay. As it's easy to imagine, organizations in general tend to connect with others from the same geographical area. The network cannot be easily divided into smaller subgroups based on common characteristics of the organizations. This suggests that even though there are differences in the number of connections among organizations in the center of the network, these are the orange nodes, and those with fewer connections indicated in green, it was not possible to divide the network into smaller subgroups based on common characteristics. Therefore, the structure of the network reflects a core periphery model of integration. What does it mean that reflects a core periphery model of integration? The main characteristic of this model of integration is to have a small group of densely connected actors at the center of the network and a larger group of actors in the periphery, characterized by the low level of exchange. What does it mean? What are the consequences and implications of being at the center, at the core? The organizations that are at the core of the network generally benefit from dense flow of information exchange, collaboration, and meetings. They also tend to share a similar conceptualization of global citizenship education, which is in mainstream by definition. There's no clear pattern between the dimension of the node, so the resources devoted to global citizenship education, and its position in the network. This seems to suggest that the centrality in the network is not a function of the resources devoted to GCD. those who are the center of the network are not necessarily big organizations with huge budget. Yet, the vast majority of organizations that are at the core part of the networks are the so-called multiscalar, the triangle in the left-hand map. So they operate at local, national, and international level. And moreover, when we combine the core periphery map with the global citizenship education conceptualization, we can see the importance of the organization working outside the center. Data show that new ideas and experiences can be moved into the network from position in the periphery. Next slide, please. A fourth highlight is about the importance of networking. Organizations tend to have a higher number of outgoing rather than incoming ties, especially for multiscalar, those who are at the core. This seems to indicate that actors in this sector consider networking an important activity, and they are aware of the material benefit and resources generated by the possession of a stable network of relationship or being part of a larger group. Then number fifth, the number 5, the final highlight, we use a network keyword analysis to investigate the global citizenship education definition provided by the participant seeking patterns of conceptual relations among GCD actors. Our preliminary data in this part shows that there is much diversity in the language used by organizations, indicating diverse positions, an intermixing goal, action, concepts, orientations, issue, and future visions. We saw no overarching guiding or shared definition of global citizenship education. Nevertheless, some harmonies are evident through organization use of language pertaining to global, to the SDGs number target 4.7 and overall the Agenda 2030, especially for the actor at the core. UNESCO in this map plays a central role, especially in the digital network map, the UNESCO to UNESCO relations from a densely interconnected cluster with multiple links to various UNESCO sites. Therefore, the influence of these central actors in the network on the overall work of global citizenship education is very significant. In sum, data seems to confirm that global policy discourses, such as SDGs and Agenda 2030, create cohesion among some actors in the network located at the core. The question is, to what extent are global discourses and goals driving local initiatives? Or are local initiatives informing global goals? Next slide, please. In conclusion, based on the results of this investigation, some recommendations can be drawn for practitioners and policymakers to further promote and assess global citizenship education policy and practice, and to stimulate a debate at the end of this session. First, networking is perceived as crucial. Effort to strengthen the network without forcing a homogenizing agenda of GCD can contribute to stronger GCD work at the individual organization level, as well as a sector. Secondly, multi-stakeholder collaboration seems to be well established in this network, especially in Europe. This collaborative environment can be used to deepen and expand the important contribution of GCD to education policy and practice. We can see the importance of the organization working outside the center, number 3. These ideas and experiences can be moved into the network from position on the periphery. While further research is needed to fully understand how ideas move within the network, we can recommend that organizations attend to the network that has been created out of this shared work. In other words, expand the horizons and go beyond the contacts with the usual suspect is a way to come across new ideas. Finally, number 4, mapping across the Europe and North America region. Actually, there are 2 different regions, very separate regions. It was very useful to understand patterns of relation and to further strengthen the network. to replicate a similar social network analysis in other regions of the world could represent an important step forward, not only for comparative research, but also to use the evidence to facilitate relationship within and across various regions of the world. Final one, the final, and that's all for on my side, and I look forward to discuss, if it's possible, with the audience. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Massimiliano. That was fascinating. We don't actually have any questions in the chat from the audience, and we only have 4 minutes left. So I'm going to give the floor back to Kate, just to see if she has a couple of final words that she would like to say, and then I'll give Massimiliano that chance, and then we'll end the session. Thank you. So Kate.
Thanks, Alison, and thanks, Massimiliano. That was fantastic. I think it's so interesting to reflect on now the importance of networks and collaborations, and for those who are in the centre, firstly, how those networks are changing because of COVID, their structure and their constituents and the flows of information might be affected, particularly around meetings, for instance. But then also how those in the centre have such an obligation now to bring a variety of voices, a variety of perspectives, and a wide range of expertise to the centre, because there are a lot of people and a lot of really important expertise out there, maybe not academic expertise, but there's a range of expertise that we need to bring into the centre to make sure that global citizenship education, climate communication, and transformative education is meeting the needs across regions and cultures and things. So I think the understanding of networks and really working to expand the participants in those networks is a really important function in this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. And I know it's very important for the MISE project. You have a massive consortium of academics and other researchers working on that. Anyway, Massimiliano, a last couple of comments from you, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, because Kate presented a very important network, and she provided evidence of the importance of network in disseminating ideas, in assessing the project, and in fostering climate change education in this case, or fostering global citizenship education. So this is exactly an important example of the role of network, and I'm sure that in the audience there is plenty of people working in networks and benefit from what network could provide to strengthen and disseminating ideas. Kate, you mentioned that the COVID, you're right, because the COVID had a huge impact in the possibility, in real possibility for actors to meeting and to group together, especially the face-to-face meeting. However, when we submitted our questionnaires, we asked to the participants to answer about the 6 months before experience of meeting. So there was also included a pre-COVID area. So the data we presented are also referring to the pre-COVID era. So it still is the central role of the 3 maps, the central role of the knowledge sharing is one of the key issue. The network we analyzed revealed that there is a network, a knowledge of network, which is very important and very impactful in the real activity of people. So of people and the various actors.
Thank you, Massimiliano. I'm sorry, but our time is up. So sorry for interrupting. We've got less than a minute to go. So I'd like to thank both our presenters today and the audience as well, many of whom are reacting in the chat to say how fascinating they have found the subjects. We will now have a 15-minute break, and then the closing ceremony will start at 12:15 Paris time and 8:15 in the evening in Korea time. We hope you will join us for the final session. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye from Paris.